In this video, I want to talk with you about avoidance. I've been hearing this theme with people that they feel anxiety and therefore they avoid certain things. So they avoid dealing with certain feelings, avoiding certain places, talking with certain people, and most important, they are avoiding what God is calling them in to address. If you're listening to my channel, it needs to be on your heart to pray about the things that I say. It needs to be on your heart to go and return to God and ask Him if the things that I say are true. If the times that I'm telling you that we are living in, if I am indeed who I say that I am, doing what I say that I'm doing for God, and you have not discerned that with God, you have not discerned who I am, what I'm doing, the times that we're living in, there's a problem, guys. You need to be discerning that with God. Otherwise, you're just listening to someone who's actually making a pretty significant claim. In my eyes, this is very significant. If someone is telling me the things that I tell you on this channel, I'm going to go discern that with God. I'm going to make sure that I step away from them and then I go to Him and make sure that what they are saying to me is true. There are a lot of things that I say to you on this channel that you cannot receive from me. You have to receive those things from Him. And if you keep listening to me without discerning that, then what's going on in your heart is idolatry, even if what I'm saying is true. And the reason for that is because you did not return to Him to make sure that I am true and what I say is true. I want to remind you of some of the things that I've talked with you about in previous videos. Number one, I always tell you to go and do a fast. And during that fast, to discern whether I'm from Him, to discern whether what I say is true, and to return to Him and make Him your number one. So if you're not doing that, there's a problem. The other thing that I tell you is that fear needs to be distinguished. You need to distinguish whether you have a spirit of fear, which compels you in your flesh. You feel like you're not going to get relief unless you, act out, the work of your hands, do things that are outside of your integrity, submit yourself to an idol, abdicate control over your personal responsibility to an idol, distract yourself. These are compulsions. They are things that you feel like you absolutely must do it, and there's a sense of urgency. God does not move you that way. God moves you with prudence. God moves you with clarity. You know when God is speaking to you. There is a marked contrast between the way that the devil compels you versus the way that God moves you, convicts you, builds you. If you are compelled and you feel like something is attacking you, like even in the world, they say panic attack, depression attack, shame attack. If you feel like something is attacking you, that's a spirit, and it is attacking you. And the reason it has a right to attack you is because you keep giving in to sin. You keep giving into the work of your own hands, trying to control things, etc. And avoidance is an attempt to control the way that you feel. It is an action. You are actively trying to avoid receiving what God has sent for you to be built with, avoid information that He has brought to your attention that you're supposed to go back and say, hey, is this true? It's an action. It is an action by the work of your own hands to actively reject and avoid God's ministry in your life. That is a sin. And it is a sin that will hand you over to a spirit of fear. The very thing that you think you're avoiding, you will be handed over to for the destruction of your flesh. There's also a feeling of fear. So there's a spirit of fear and there's a feeling of fear. If you are feeling fear, then you're able to recognize that God gave you that feeling of fear so that you would stay close to Him. When a child strays from their parent in a public place and they look around and their parent's not around, they feel fear. And the reason they feel fear is to teach them, to discipline them to stay close to their parent. You are being disciplined to stay close to your Father in heaven, to not stray, to not be rebellious. And so you have a feeling of fear. And that feeling of fear is intended to train you and discipline you to return to Him, to go back to Him. Is that not what he has said throughout his word? Return to me and I'll heal you. And it just so happens that when people do that fast that I recommend, the 3-day fast, and they truly run their hearts to him and they return to him, that spirit of fear is cast out. People report it every time, as long as they have done it correctly, as long as they have truly rent their heart. Otherwise, people say, well, I didn't really experience much, or I experienced a little bit of relief, but I still feel this and I feel like I need to do another fast, which is correct. You most of the time do need to do another fast. What people are feeling when peace returns to them is they're feeling the spirit of the enemy go out of them, and the spirit of God, which is peace, which is love, restoring them. So there's a difference between the spirit of fear and the feeling of fear, but there is a relationship. And that relationship is, when you feel fear, if you do not return to God, you are handed over to a spirit of fear. You need to discern whether you're feeling fear or you have a spirit of fear. And you need to take it seriously, because a lot of times I talk about this and people don't take it seriously. They're like, okay, whatever, I have a spirit of fear. Well, I don't know what to do about that, even though I'm saying what to do about it. Fast, pray, return to him. But then they avoid doing it. Well, what do you think they're going to be handed over to? I told you, avoidance is a sin. Who are you to avoid what God is raising in your life? Who are you to feel the feelings he gave you in your design when you say that you are in him, but then you justify what it is you're going to deal with and what you're not? It's a sin. You absolutely must deal with all of the things that God is bringing up inside of you. And I tell you this all the time, through your feelings, your memories, your thoughts, your dreams, your experiences and situations that he's raising in your life, your sensations. Who are you to say, no, this one I'm not going to deal with. No, this one I'm not going to pick up. Do you realize that you're not your own? That the potter gets to mold you into whatever he has deemed good? So that when he's raising these things, he's training you and disciplining you according to what he knows is true, what he knows is good, and what he wants to teach you, wants to reveal to you. If you have not discerned me, if you have not discerned the things that I'm saying to you, you need to take a break. You need to step back and you need to pray and go to God and ask him if I am from him, if what I'm saying is true, and how you need to pick things up. If he confirms that what I'm saying is true, it means something for you. It means something for your covenant. For example, you've been told in counterfeit Christianity that you've already been saved, that your covenant has already been, everything's been paid for in your covenant. No, Christ paid his part. You have to fulfill your part of the covenant. You've been told all of these lies, and it has led to you resting on your laurels and thinking that you can just pick and choose and that you can do your best rather than setting God as the standard, because the Bible I'm reading says you must become holy as God is holy, not as you are holy, not according to your best. It's according to God's Spirit. It's according to actually submitting to him. You see the difference in that? One is by the work of your own hands. The other is by submission to God. You've been taught all of these things in order that Satan might produce a wicked and lazy servant, an entitled, avoidant, selective servant. And you should know from that parable that that servant is not saved, nor does that servant have an inheritance. What that servant has will be given to others who have more. They'll be stripped. And so as I'm telling you what you need to pick up right now, and I'm talking with you about the times, and I'm talking with you about my role and your role, if you're not going back to God because you're scared or you feel anxious and you're just simply avoiding returning to him and discerning these things with him, how can you be saved? How can you understand your covenant? There's a big difference between the things that I say and the things that counterfeit Christianity says. The things that I say require action. The things that you ingested from counterfeit Christianity, that lie that you've made your refuge, requires nothing of you, and in the end, you won't be saved. How could you not take this back to God? to know what you need to pick up right now. Let me say it again. The things that I talk about require action. They require action in your covenant, or you will not be saved. There's no way for you to avoid hearing the things that I say if they are from God and still be saved. So I want to admonish each and every one of you that if you have not received from God, whether the things I say are true regarding the end times, the times we're living in right now, the covenant that you're supposed to be living out, you're avoiding the very motivation that God is using through his witnesses in your design, the feeling of fear that tells you that you need to return to him. You're avoiding all of that. And by very nature, you are not fulfilling your covenant. If you continue to listen to me and you have not discerned the things that I say, who I am, who I serve, you are engaging in idolatry. And what does that mean? Does that mean unsubscribe, stop listening to me? Is that what that means? No, it means go to God and ask him. That's what that means. Go to God and ask him. And if you're not hearing from him, you need to fast. And just like I've been telling you in a gazillion videos on this channel, that should be the first thing that you're doing is fasting, returning to him and asking him, is this a channel I should be listening to? Is this servant of you? And if they are of you, well, then the difficult things that I say, you can't just avoid. You can't just pick and choose. If I am anointed by God to speak the things that I'm speaking to you, then when I say things that are difficult for you to comprehend or accept or be reproved on or disciplined on, then you'll always know that you have to go back to him and discern with him the things that I say. You'll always know that because if he's vouching for me, if he's testifying to me, then you know who you need to take this up with. And there are some on the channel who actually do that. And God confirms for them every time that they do that what I'm saying is true, that the reproval that I'm giving them is true, because reproval's not easy to receive. But see, on the other hand, if you don't discern me and I say something you don't like, you can just, dislike what I say, dislike my video, unsubscribe from the channel, stop listening to me, right? You can just do those things. You can treat his servants like they do in cancel culture. But if you've discerned that I'm from him, then you realize that if I'm saying things that you don't like and you go discern them with him and you know that they're true and you're actually going through those steps, then you know that by rejecting his servants, you are not rejecting his servants, you're rejecting him. Therefore, if you are picking and choosing what you want to listen to that I say without discerning it with God, you are picking and choosing what he's saying through his servant. There's no avoidance in God's kingdom. You need to listen and pick up what he's raising to the surface. All of us have felt afraid, but if you are feeling afraid to the point that you just decide, well, I'm only going to read this part of the Bible. I'm only going to listen to this part of what God's servants are saying. If that's where you're going with it, you've not been perfected in love, because perfect love drives out fear. If you're still feeling fear to that level, you have not been perfected in love, and you need to receive that from God. Thank you for listening. Please discern this with God.